Hey guys, we're here today to talk about reproduction in flowering plants. So this is any plant that has a flower or grows a flower, and pretty much all plants do grow flowers. The only plants that are not flowering are pine cones like conifers, moss, and ferns. Other than those, pretty much all plants are flowering, whether you know it or not. They do produce some type of flower. So we're going to talk about how they reproduce or make more of themselves. To talk about it, we need to know about the parts of a flower, okay? This whole part here is the female part, and the female part is called the pistil. Everyone say pistil. This part here is the male part. The male part is called the stamen, and we can remember stamen because it has the word men in it. This is the male part. Now on the stamen we have pollen. We know that pollen is real dusty and yellow. And our pistil here, this part up here is called the stigma because it is sticky, so I like to call it the sticky stigma. All right. Now what happens is we're going to use a bee in this case for a pollinator. Bees, birds, butterflies, they can all be pollinators. But we're going to use a bee. All right. Now not all flowers have female and male parts. Some flowers will just have a female part, and some flowers will just have a male part or male parts. All right, but in this case we are using a flower that has both male and female parts. Okay, and here's what all these male parts will look like. There could be lots of them, but there is only ever one female part. There's only one pistil. All right, there can be multiple stamen. So what the bee does is the bee will come on over, and it's attracted to these big petals because they're real colorful and pretty, and they also smell really good. And the bee will come and it'll drink this flower's nectar, like a sweet juice. What the bee doesn't know is that this dusty pollen is rubbing off on its body. It's real dusty, okay? Then what will happen is the pollen that's on the bee will then rub off onto the sticky stigma, okay? Now, if we had a female plant and a male plant, it's the same thing. The bee would come, drink from the male plant, get the pollen rubbed off on him, and then go bzz, 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 and come to a female plant, drink the nectar from a female plant, and the pollen would land on the stigma. That right there is pollination. When the pollen from the stamen lands onto the stigma, that is pollination. Now we get into fertilization. So fertilization, we have our pollen up here, and our pollen is what we call the sperm cell. Now the pollen or sperm cell will travel down a tube into the ovary. Now the ovary has these little things called ovules, right? They're almost like little sacs, okay? And the ovules are what we call the egg cell. So we've got egg cells, and then the pollen, which is our sperm cell. Now what happens is our sperm cell, that pollen joins with the egg cells, the ovules. And when the sperm cell and the egg cell join together, that is when fertilization has taken place. When the sperm cell and the egg cell join together, a seed is formed. And seeds will form in the ovules here. Seeds will form. Now, two things can happen once the seeds form, okay? This ovary can turn into a fruit. The ovary will develop into a fruit if it is like an apple tree or an orange tree or anything like that. And what is in fruits? Seeds, okay? So in a plant that produces fruit, this ovary will turn into a fruit with seeds inside of it, and it'll drop onto the ground, or someone will pick it, or an animal will eat it. And a plant that does not produce fruits, such as just a basic flower, the seeds will just be here in the flower, okay? Now the third step of the reproduction of flowering plants is seed dispersal. So at this point, we either have a flower with seeds, or we have a fruit with seeds that has dropped. So the seeds need to be dispersed or spread around. In a just a normal old flower that does not produce a fruit, the seeds could be carried away by the wind. The seeds can go onto an animal's fur and be transferred like that. The seeds could even fall off with the rain and travel with the water. But when a fruit is made from an ovary and the fruit falls, there's many ways it can be dispersed. Let's think of coconuts. Coconuts are the fruit that fall from a palm tree. Coconut seeds can be dispersed in the ocean with the water. Seeds can also be dispersed with the wind. Seeds can be dispersed by animals if they get stuck to the fur, or animals can even eat the fruits and poop out the seeds. All right, so seeds can be dispersed in many different ways. Also, humans are always dispersing seeds. Now, when those seeds are dispersed or spread around, they then go into the ground and start to grow. The fourth step of reproduction in plants is, well, what happens when a seed starts to grow? It begins to germinate, and germinate means to sprout. So when you see a seed and it has a little bit of green sprouting out of it, it is germinating. And at that point, is a new flower or a new plant about to grow? Yes, absolutely. All right, so our 4 steps in the reproduction of flowering plants are 1, pollination, 2, fertilization, 3, seed dispersal, and then finally, number 4 is germination, the sprouting of a new plant. And I have right here a little model of the plant. So we have our pistil, stigma, all the stamen. This is the ovary, and then these little things are the ovules. All right, let me know if you have any questions.